Hey guys, Corey here for part 2 of our tutorial series. Alright, so where we left off last time was our basic client and server, and we talked about one of the biggest issues was we can't have multiple clients. And we proposed a solution to stop it, was having a handler that dealt with the incoming clients. The server's like, here you go, he's your problem now. So let's make a new file for that. Okay? Now, for this guy to work, look, I'm just picking my nose on camera. Can you believe that? 30 seconds in. Already doing great. So we're going to have to work with threading. Okay? Threading. What's threading? Okay, there's also a lot of great tutorials on the basics of threading. And once again, like I say in my intro video, I don't want to go over just the basics because this is more for the intermediate level people. I'm going to do quick refreshers. I know with the shortcuts I went a little more in depth than just going over them pretty quick. It was almost like a full tutorial on itself. Threading, just to remind you guys, allows you to make parts of your program that don't run linearly. I can be going down my function step by step, and a thread, a little branch as I like to think of it, can go off and be doing things itself. But problems arise when you have multiple threads accessing the same variable, because that could get corrupted. Who wins? Who gets the data first? What if someone's changing it when someone's reading it? Do they take the old, the new, something messed up in between, some Frankenstein mishmash of the data? I don't know. And that's bad. If you don't know in your programming, if there is an undefined state in your program, just like electronics, if you ever do digital circuit work, undefined states are bad. Very, very bad. You avoid them. That's what we're going to deal with. So threading. So I'm going to call this guy a client handler, and we're going to make him a class, okay? Because we're going to call, every time there's a client coming in, we're going to call an instance of this class and pass them off to it, okay? So if you haven't worked much with classes before, this will give you an idea of why they're used. I remember when I was first learning classes, I was like, why do I need these? Why can't I just use functions? And now when I'm teaching people, I was a tutor for ASU for a while. The same thing kind of happened where people were like, why do I need classes? Now, that's an interesting question, and we'll really see why in a second. It'll be better for me to show you. Threading.thread. Okay. So we're going to make this class inherit from threading.thread. And what does that mean? Well, it means that this class will have all the same functions and powers and variables inside of it that a thread does, because a thread is a class as well. So that's pretty useful right there. So we have to start off with the def underscore init function. Okay, and this will take in self. Okay. So when we make this client handler, it's going to call this function called init, right? It's going to set everything up inside of our class. It's going to be like, all right, this is prep time. So whenever I make a new client handler, this function is by default, this is the name it looks for, and that's what's called. And so what's going to happen in here? Well, it needs a couple things to deal with the client. Well, actually, I'm going to make the connection first because it's more important. So we need the connection, obviously. If this guy's going to deal with the client, he needs the connection that's been made to talk to them, right? So I'll do the self.con equals con. Now, by the way, I know something that I always was confused on. Do I need to name this the same as this guy? No, I can name this like potato, but it'll still work like the connection. Okay, just handy. I like to do it this way, just so I know what that variable is and what parameter goes with what. So what's the self.con do? Well, if I input this variable into this function and want to use it in another function, because I'm going to have functions for sending data, right? And I want to do it with the connection. Well, this guy's a local variable to only this function, right? He's not going to be accessed. These other functions, like, if there's a Corey that lived in California, which I used to actually, but I'm in Texas now, and you came in and into like into my friend's house, and you're like, hey, where's Corey at? They wouldn't be like, oh, do you mean the Corey that lives here or the Corey in California? No, they think you mean the local Corey, right? So those other functions, if I call connection the con variable, they're going to be like, I don't have a local connection. I don't know a local con variable. So we had to do self.con to make it almost like a global variable inside of the class, right? So that everybody inside the class can use that if they call self.con, right? That's the use of that. Adder equals, I'm going to call this IP. We'll pass in the IP address. Call this IP equals IP. Call this IP. Because all I really care about is IP. We don't really need the IP dealing with them, but sometimes it's nice. Because later on I know that we'll check who's connected to our server, right? Now that the server is only really listening for people, we can every once in a while just kind of check, be like, hey, what's going on, man? Who's connected here? What's happening? And that'll be useful for us because we can see what IPs and be like, oh, that IP shouldn't be here, and if we have IPs open from previous connections of like testing that we forgot to close. Okay, so that really does it for that. There's one other thing we got to call though. Okay, I'm going to write it out and I'll explain it real fast. And so dot underscore init. Okay, what did I just do? What is this line of code? Well, the thing is the threading class, okay, this thread class right here, all right, it has a lot of stuff it needs to set up personally, right? And when we make this init function, well, it also has an init function. But when we make this guy, it doesn't call the thread's initializing function, right? It's like, nah, I'm good. I'm just going to call the most recent one, right? If you're downloading software, you're going to download the most recent version, right? Unless it's like Python 2 or something and you have your favorite version. But the normal person. So this thing looks and finds the most recent version of the function in like the hierarchy chain of, inherited classes and calls it. But that's not 100% what we want. We want this to happen. But we also need the thread to do whatever it needs to do to set itself up so that can run independently of the main program, right? Because if the server passes off this guy to a client handler and he's not a thread, our program will sit there and wait for the client handler to finish and do whatever he's doing. Okay, so we need to make him a thread. And for him to have all these abilities, we still need to have it call its own initialization function. Right? That's what init stands for, initialization. I just cracked my hip joint. That's weird. So what we're saying here is super, and we're saying give me the ancestor of this class, client handler. Okay. And what am I going to pass in? Well, I'm just going to pass in myself. I'm just going to pass in my current state. All right. Because every initialization function needs self, right? So I'm just going to pass in myself. That's it. And then what function do you want to call from your ancestor? I'm going to do initialization. That's all I'm going to call. Right? Okay. And by the way, you don't need to actually type in self in any of these functions. Like, you'll see def, a function called foo or whatever, and let's see, bar, like that or something, it takes in self as a parameter, right? But nowhere when I call the function, like say I want to call it later, I don't have to go foo self or whatever. I don't have to type that in, okay? Because it's so common and universally used in Python that it by default passes itself in. You'll see an error sometimes if I don't do this, or if I do this, or if I forget to do it and I call this function, it'll sometimes, and maybe I have like an x and a y, and then it's like z equals x plus y, whatever. I'm doing things, right? And I call this function, I call foo down later, and I put in maybe like 1 and 2 or whatever, and I put that stuff in. It'll say, hey, you're giving me 3 arguments, but I only expect 2. And you're like, what? I only put in a 1 and a 2 down here. Like, I only went 1, 2. Well, it automatically passes in this self guy, right? It's automatically under the hood going self, which is all the data stored inside of itself, right? So that this function can have access to everything inside of here, right? Going self.con doesn't automatically give this guy access to it. He needs to, it puts it inside of this little self guy, right? So that when I pass in self here, all right, it's all the data stored within inside of our class. Right? Now I can go .con, stuff like that, right? So under the hood it puts this in, but we don't have to put it in when we call the function, but when we're defining it, we have to make sure it's there. Okay. All right, fake function, foobar. It's the first time I ever used foobar. I feel like a elite programmer now. All right. So that's done for that, okay. See down, we're going to make a couple functions here. I'm just going to spell them out. Derf. Derf. Okay. So here's what we're going to do, okay. We're going to make a receive data function. Okay. And so this function is what the client handler is basically going to be running, okay, most of the time, for now, for our testing purposes. There's receive data. We'll make it a bit nicer because over here we had to program all this encoding and decoding, whatever. When this handler comes, we're just going to pre-program all that in here. So whenever he needs to receive data, we can just call receive data, right? We don't need to put all these decodes and encodes for different scenarios. We can just go receive data, okay? I can go self.con.receive 1024 like this, okay? And then I can go, I can go, well, of course, message equals, okay? Now, this I'm going to have return the message. Pretty straightforward. But there's something I want to do, right? It comes in bytes, right? So we run into that problem of what if we want to print it? Okay. Well, I need to decode this byte data. UTF-8. Okay. Now, what if I do want the bytes, though? Because, say, this guy just returned a message. He returned a string, right? Let's say I'm writing to a file, and I don't want to write the string of my data. Say it's a picture, I want to, I'm going to rename that as byte data. Okay, like this. So this guy, if I want to receive my bytes, I can do self.con.receive 1024 return. Boom. That way I got the bytes. So now we have the option of, if certain commands are called, if we're sending files, he'll use receive and sending byte data. Okay. That means I'll put this down here too. Send byte data. Actually, when we send data, it's always got to be in bytes anyway. Data. That encode. Encode UTF-8. Okay. I'm going to do something real fast. I'm going to do try. Explain what I'm doing in a second here. Just let me write it out. That way you can start pondering it yourself a little bit and seeing kind of how my code flows when I write. All right, cool. Print error. String sys.exec sys.exec info 0. Okay. So what did I do? Whoa, spook. I did a try. So I try this. Encode the data. And then send it. Data. Okay. If that works, fantastic. If it doesn't, it means there was an error with the data, or there was an error with sending, or something went wrong, right? And this right here, the sys.exec info, usually returns the last error, right? It's execute info, right? And the 0 is the last thing, the part that we want, all right? It's the most recent call. And it'll tell us what error there was, print it out to the screen, and this will return false. The reason I have returned true and false is because maybe you're sending a file and it fails. Well, should your server just stop sending that file? No, we kind of want it to send a couple times, right? So if it fails, maybe we can have it try maybe once, twice more times, and then hit a limit. Be like, I tried 3 times, I'm done. And then maybe you're like, okay, just relax a second. You go deal with the server, and then go now send it. And then you can have it send again. If you don't have a try except statement and your program hits an error, you notice yourself, in the last time when it had trouble connecting, it just broke out of the program. That's bad. I mean, if your server hits a tiny error, you don't want the whole thing shutting down. I mean, imagine if Google servers, somebody Google searched something that led to an error, right? They just put in weird symbols. Do you want the whole Google servers crashing? No. We're not going to put a lot of error handling in here right now. This is the only thing I want in here for now. We're not going to do so much error handling we're going to save that for a later video, okay? So, and we're not even going to be using the send data right now, honestly. Run function. So why am I calling this run? What is it going to do? Every thread has a special function inside of itself called run. So that if you've seen threads before, which I suggest if you haven't worked with them, you go watch the tutorial video because I'm not going over them super much. I'm going like how to inherit them and use their abilities and such. If you call run, okay, at point. If you call run, that's when you call start on a thread, it calls this function run. Okay, so we're making our own version of it. So when we tell this thread to start, it'll call this and be like, ready to go. Let's do it, and run what we want it to. Okay. What do we want to do? Well, we can say message equals we can go message, and then I can go while message does not equal. We're going to do pretty much the exact same thing we did with the server, right? Let's check my time. Oh, not bad. Okay, 16. Maybe it's too long for you guys. Short attention spans. I know if a coding tutorial is too long, I'm like, nah, skip. I'll figure it out myself. So we'll go message not equal write quit. Okay, well, message equals receive data. Remember we said this will return the decoded into string stuff, right? Message equals receive data. We don't need to put the self in there. And then we will go print message. And then we'll just put in a closing client connection with the comma adds automatically a space and just allows you to self.ip, and that will be a string, so that should be okay. Closing client connection with self.ip. That looks pretty good. I bet there's an error somewhere that I'm not spotting, but we'll go to desktop. Okay, and I will go desktop handler. I'll just call it B client handler because there's already a client handler. Because once again, I had to re-record all these videos. So that looks good. Now, how do we implement it with a server? Okay. Well, we're going to change a couple things here. I'm going to copy pasta. I'm going to cut that out right there. And put that in there. I'm going to see this message stuff. Everything dealing with handling with a client we don't want the server to do. So I'm going to remove it. It's gone. It's gone. And only for a bit. I will change it a bit. While true statement, I'll put passing off client. Great, so what have we done? We're not quite finished, but it's listening, we set it up and everything, and then we go while true. So listen for somebody, accept them in, tell us that you receive them, and then it'll pass it off. What it'll pass it off to? Well, our nice little guy, B client I feel like I spelled client wrong. Am I spelling client wrong? It does not matter. Import B client handler. Actually, I'm going to do from import B client handler import client handler. Because this is the guy I want, right? I want this class named client handler. So if I just did import B client handler, just like with socket, I need to go socket.socket. And I don't want to type B client handler dot client handler every time I want to make one. And it'll only be one line of code, but it's just nicer to be like client equals client handler. Now I don't need to put it there because I've directly imported it. What do I need to pass in? I need to pass in that guy. And then our IP address, which is, remember from the last video, that's the first element in this list of address data the client has. So now I have that, and now I just need to go client.start. We can use the same keyword because it inherits from thread. So it acts just like a thread does, but with some extra things that we added on top. A little icing to the cake, right? And we can directly, as long as these guys are in the same directory, okay, that shouldn't be there. As long as these guys are in the same directory, we'll be able to import each other. Because at first it'll look, if you import a library, first it'll look in the Python library directory on your computer. If it's not there, it'll check its own directory. It may check your own directory first. I don't remember the order, but it'll do that. So make sure they're in the same directory, or you put bclient handler in your Python library. If you notice, I saved them both on the desktop, just for just that purpose. So let's walk through. We bind the server. It listens for it sets up this thing saying, hey, I'll only accept 100. I'll only have a waiting list of 100 people before I stop rejecting them. Then I'll just chill here, accept anybody that comes in. I'll pass them off to the client handler. I'll start it, and then I'll come back around and wait for the next guy, over and over and over again. The client handler, he gets told to start. Well, what does he do? He just gets his message. He waits until it's right quit, and then he'll close down. But if it's not right quit, he'll just be printing out the message over and over. He'll just receive it with the receive data thing that we have. Okay? All right. So let's test these bad boys. Run module. Server started, listening for clients. We got a little lag coming on. CD desktop. Python. I'm going to make it so you can see them side by side. Look at all these Python windows we have open. Great language. Python B client B client dot py. Connect to the server. Receive data is not defined. Oh, right. Self. Because once again, it'll be like, I don't know what this function is. Okay, it's not defined, so we have to say, hey, it's stored inside of this, the information inside of the class. Just look inside there, and he will. And you say, oh, receive data, right? Okay. Okay. So let's restart that. Server started. C desktop. Python B client.py. Connect to server. Passing off client. Connect to the server. Great. Hi. Hi. Ooh, look at that. It comes up. Hello. Wie geht's? Was pass. Just to make sure it's good, you can just send blah, 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 blah. It's working. Fantastic. Look at that. And it even looks like a Linux command line. How professional. But what happens if I come over here, okay, and I just, client made at IP, all right, I'm just gonna, okay, all looks good. Desktop, what happens if I come over here and I just start up another little guy, what is it, B client, oh, look at that, another connection made, but is this guy stopped? What if I just put in hi? No, we still get it. Well, what if I put in him? Well, it also gets it. Whoa, we have 2 clients right now. Exciting stuff. Why did I search that? Let's see if we can get just one more going. Go away. C desktop, Python B client.py, connected to server, sup. So they're all connected, right? So if I put right quit, connection closed. Closing connection, boom, done. Well, does that mean these guys are stopped now? No, it doesn't, because they have their own individual threads of handlers. So I'm going to close that guy. Connection closed with blah, blah, blah IP. And last one standing. Bye-bye. Right quit. Done. Perfect. So it works. We were able to handle multiple clients, get info from multiple clients, view who we're connected to, and shut them down one by one. Perfect. That's a big step forward for the server. So we have already done some nice stuff. Bye-bye, server. Done some nice updates. So future problems. Well, what can we do? Well, send messages. That's great. This is a cloud server, right? We're supposed to be sending files, okay? So that's what we're going to do next time. We're actually going to use this receive data, receive byte data and such, and we're going to set up the sending and receiving files. We will need to change our client a little bit next time and make it able to receive data as well. So now we're going to see our first commands. We're going to see our first commands, and we're going to see our first file transfer. So I hope you'll join us next time. I will see you then.